is, do you ever find yourself wondering why the same kind of arguments happen over and over again, whether you're dating or in a relationship? And because of that, does it ever have you wondering, can this love thing actually work? Does love really, is it possible?
Or do you find yourself single again and again? Or here's another question, do you find yourself actually feeling single even though you're in a relationship? So you have joined us for the 10 biggest reasons that relationships fail, the online class. And thank you for being here. It's a privilege for us to get to work together. And I am so immensely excited to spend this time. And I'm really grateful that you chose to join us tonight. So with that, let's jump in.
Okay. Just a few things to help you kind of be in the right frame of mind and heart for what we're about to do. We want to start with saying that everything we're going to be teaching tonight is applicable to human beings. So if you're straight, LGBT, this is all for you, but for convenience and not having to be linguistically, politically correct all the time, we're going to be referring to men and women, husband, wife. So please know that we're in no way intending to slight the LGBT community. This is applicable for everybody, but it just makes it a little bit simpler. So we hope that you can roll with that. And before we dive into the nitty-gritty of what we're covering, what we want to tell you is a few things about why we even put this thing together. First and foremost, between Joanna and myself, we've spent a combined 30 years of working with couples and singles, individuals, around relationship issues, different aspects of relationship. And the thing that continually, after all these years, breaks our heart is the amount of pain that people get in when it comes to relationship. Too many relationships still fail. When relationships fail, it's a natural thing then to want to wonder, is it even worth it? So there's a lot of people who not only are suffering heartache and heartbreak unnecessarily, but when they are, then the worst possible thing is we can give up on love. And when we give up on love for ourselves, for another person, how bleak does that get? So we wanted to come together and be able to offer this class to help people get reconnected to how much love is possible. And at the same time, recognizing that unlike what a lot of the media would have people believe, the pathway to having a conscious, healthy, and hot relationship really is about being able to have a realistic sense of what it takes, and that there are mistakes that people make pretty commonly, and really because how many of you out there got a great undergraduate or graduate education in how to do relationship?
Seriously.
We sure as hell didn't.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be able to offer some things that we've learned that can give you a pathway to recognize if you're dating, that you can prevent some mistakes. If you're already in a long-term relationship, then you're likely to recognize these 10 biggest reasons, which we've kind of redubbed 10 mistakes, 10 most common mistakes people make, that you want to look at where you might find yourself in this. So we're wanting to really be able to give you both a guide to what to watch out for, and we are going to be able to tell you later in the event how you can work your way through them and into the kind of love you want, because we can't possibly cover everything in 90 minutes.
So, and because I got thrown off, I'm so excited about being with you guys tonight that I meant to introduce myself right at the beginning and then let Jeff introduce himself. So we didn't say this, but I'm Joanna Kennedy, passion and intimacy expert with happinessloveandpleasure.com.
And I'm Jeff Lawton, relationship architect with yourrelationshiparchitect.com.
And so whether you're a single, you're a couple, you're somewhere in between, we are going to have a really fun exploration. Might touch a few buttons on what might have gone wrong in the past or maybe what's going on right now. But either way, it's going to be filled with a whole bunch of aha moments. And so that's what we're up to. And you are in the right place tonight. If you have been there, done that, I should say, with heartbreak, and you actually want hot and happy instead of confusing and frustrating and painful. Or you're in the right place if you are a woman who can't seem to find and keep a great guy, and you wonder, where are all the strong men, and where's the guy that actually is going to meet me?
And if you're a man, you're in the right place, again, dating or married. You're in the right place if you're constantly finding yourself thinking things like, what is it going to take to be enough for her? What is it that has her continually being upset with me? And I'm not even sure what I'm doing. And what do I do to be the kind of man that I actually am, that is really going to light up the divine feminine in her? So how do I be that, have an open heart, and still be whatever degree of manly man that if you're my age or older and probably younger than I am, you were raised as a stereotype for men?
And so I'll throw in also, if you find yourself, man or woman, in the friend or roommate zone, that's another big thing that we're going to talk about tonight. So if any of those match, this is the place to be for the next 90 minutes. And over the course of this time, we're going to talk about those mistakes. We're going to tell you how to recognize that you're making those mistakes or that you did, so that you've got that information to choose to step forward differently. We're going to share with you, as Jeff said, a way to dive deeper and shift some of that. And we're super excited to spend the last 30 minutes-ish of our 90 minutes together answering questions for you. And you'll be able to type those in. You'll actually be able to speak those to us. And if you want to speak those to us, I just want to let you know up front that you actually want to be on a Zoom application. So whether that's on your smartphone or whether that's on your computer, if you've just dialed in with the phone number, you won't be able to speak to us. But any other way that you're connected through Zoom, you'll be able to speak to us. And so last but not least is, if questions come up while we're talking, then go ahead and type those into the chat window, and those will be some of the first questions that we look at answering when we get to that Q&A session.
We really encourage you, if you have questions, ask them. My experience is people tend to be kind of shy on these things, and everything is anonymous. The only thing we're going to have access to would be a first name. And we have to have that because otherwise we don't know whether it's a man or a woman or some other species that's asking a question. So please, this is a great time to not be shy. So before we move into the 10 mistakes that we see, we wanted to give you a quick little background about who we are. Again, I mentioned why we're doing this, but if I were you out there and you don't know either myself or Joanna, then I'd be wondering, well, why should I be listening to these two people? So we want to give you a little bit of background about why we think you should be listening to us. So again, I'm Jeff Lawton, and I've been a relationship architect, which means that I help couples and individuals design and build and maintain their dream life, their dream relationship. And I'm passionate about that because I've been blessed to be in my own relationship for 34 years. And I think one of the things that makes that particularly valuable to me and to my clients is we're actually one of the few people I know that have been together that long that still love each other, still have sex, and still respect each other, and we still like each other. And I'm in this partially because I think there shouldn't be two hands full that I personally know of people that would be in that boat. And if I were dating again, I have no idea how. I wasn't all that good at it 40 years ago, but I really don't know how it would work now. And so we wanted to be able to, I want to be able to bring what I've learned in my own marriage and what I've learned from 20 years of coaching people on all this stuff. And then, oh yeah, I also wrote an internationally best-selling book last year called Built to Last, Designing and Maintaining a Passionate, Loving, and Lasting Relationship.
And he is a master, and I am so privileged to get to do this with him. And so I am Joanna Kennedy, and as I said, passion and intimacy expert. And why the heck am I that? It still floors me to this day that I do what I do in the world. And the simple story is, grew up in the heart of the women's movement and had one of the first divorced families in the block. And what I got was a lot of really lousy programming about what it means to be a woman, who men are, and whether you can trust them and whether you can rely on them. And got a whole lot of lousy conditioning about relationship and does it last, as Jeff said in the very beginning. And oh, by the way, I had a grandfather who was a minister and very conservative upbringing. So you take all of that, and we have so much programming and wiring within us that I didn't know which end was up when it came to love, and married to a great guy, Prince Charming, as I often describe him, and he really was. And we were divorced 4 years later, and I kept trying to do relationship. And it was the moment that I woke up to why I was incredibly successful professionally. Engineer, high tech, you name it, I was doing it. And I was successful, but I was really miserable. And it was the same thing that was creating success and destroying my relationships. And the good news is I can have success and I can have a great relationship. And it had everything to do with who I was as a woman, how I was relating to intimacy, sexuality, and how I was relating to men. And when I had that wake-up call, I absolutely knew my life was about making sure that women didn't have to go through what I went through and men didn't have to go through what I put men through. So for 15 years, deep diving passionately to bring this wisdom, experience, and the love that Jeff speaks of back into the lives of singles and couples stepping into deep relationship.
So as you can see, we're rank amateurs at dealing with this stuff. So thanks for hanging with us. So we're going to go into these 10 mistakes. And to help you be able to locate yourself or not, we're going to do it in the form of letting you know what the mistake is, and then how you might recognize symptoms that you're there, signs that you're there, signs that you're veering dangerously close to being in there. And we're going to really do our best to distinguish where there might be a real difference for a dating person or for someone who's already partnered, whether that's for a little bit or a long while. And we want to give you a heads up. Number one, I swear, I promise not to do it very much tonight, but just be forewarned. Number two is, because Joanna and I have been doing this a long time, we really learned that we will never serve you well if we sugarcoat anything or if we try and make it palatable to you. We're just going to give you our experience and what we know. You'll do with it what you will. But if you find yourself getting at all uncomfortable, your stomach is kind of getting in butterflies and your fingers going precariously close to the quit button, we really invite you to hang in there. The discomfort will be a good thing. It's an opening that you're going to want to take advantage of. So with that, let's go to number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add on to what Jeff said, as we're jumping into number one, is going through these painful moments. I can think of so many clients that have come back and said, thank you for getting me to see what I couldn't see. So with that, secret number one, you jump into, or you jumped into a relationship before you knew what kind of relationship you really wanted to create, and before you had a vision of how to get there.
Big common
Huge
pitfall that we can fall into, because a lot of people, when I ask couples I'm working with, why did you get into a relationship? You know, it isn't working, because usually people don't come to me when it's working. Then I'll say, well, why did you get into a relationship? Well, we loved each other. So one of the things that will help you know that this might be applicable to you is that someone's interested in you, if you're dating, and you just jump at the chance for a date.
I'm not going to get rejected. Okay, let's go.
Sure thing. Let's go for the sure thing. And you haven't even checked in whether or not your gut is telling you this is good, or maybe I don't want to do this. And you'll say yes, even if you do check in. And if it's a no, you'll say yes.
In a relationship, that might look like, oh, that lust that we had in the beginning, it's waning, and who is this person? And
what'd you do with my husband?
Yeah. Or it doesn't even have to be husband yet. It can be 6 months into it. And like, who is this? And what are we doing?
Because the hormones do shift. They do wear off. Another big one is when you start dating or you commit to someone and you haven't really checked in with each other about what matters to you most, like long-term goals. So many people, they may know, like women, for example, they know they want a child. And maybe they talk to the man and they say, you know, I really want a kid. And the man says, I don't. And then you go ahead and in your own mind, you say, I'll be able to change his mind.
It doesn't work, ladies. And we do this. And so you've got to get in sync on those values. You've got to get in sync on those goals. And then the last one, this is a couples one. You have arguments about agreements that you never made. You made them in your head. Me over here by myself. That's how our relationship should work. And all of a sudden we're fighting about something we never talked about.
Yeah, happens all the time. I run into that a lot. In fact, 3 times today.
3 times today, there you go. I'm like, we're not kidding.
You know, how come you're not doing what you said you'd do? And I'll say, well, did he or she agree to that? Well, no, but they should know.
All right, number two, yes.
Yes. Number 2, this mistake is when you enter into a relationship or you're continuing to date someone that you think is going to be the right person, and you actually believe, consciously or not consciously, the past doesn't matter.
And one of the ways that that looks for singles is, oh, let me get over the past relationship, that one that I just broke up. Let me see how fast I can get back out there. And how fast can I find another partner? Because I don't want to be alone. And that's a surefire way to have the next relationship fail. We've got to pay attention to why. And oh, by the way, that anger or that hurt, we think that's going to go away. It doesn't just go away if we don't pay attention.
In fact, it not only doesn't go away, but it leads to the next symptom. You're sitting at the dinner table with your loved one and you say, how did you like the soup tonight, honey? And they say, oh, it's really good. And then all of a sudden you want to throw your plate and decapitate your partner. And it can happen, you think I'm kidding, it can happen just like that. And I've had that experience myself, I must say. And so you suddenly find yourself getting irritated, annoyed. You're withdrawing. You're withdrawing your intimacy. You're withdrawing your affinity to your partner. And you truly know you're doing it, but you don't know why you're doing it.
Another way that this shows up, and again, I'll speak to the singles here, and it shows up with the thought, I'm never gonna let that happen again. I'm gonna find somebody that's different, who never does what he did or she did. And we go out and focus on trying to make sure that we get everything we didn't get in the last relationship. And oh, by the way, as you're focusing on it, if you're manifesting that same experience over and over again, you're making this mistake tenfold. So anytime you say, I never want, or I'm always going to make sure, that's a sure tail sign that you're making this mistake.
We call that a setup in our business.
Yes.
And one other thing, a little tidbit to go with that, is that how many of you out there realize that what your mom and dad never have gotten handled in their relationship,
even if they're divorced
or dead,
yes.
or dead, you're going to be spending years trying to sort out their unresolved stuff in your relationship. That is, unless, of course, you find out how to avoid that and how to work through it.
Exactly. Please do. It's so not worth it.
And then there's one last symptom of this one. Sex, you forget how to spell it, you forget how to do it, and it's kind of become a distant memory along with the last time your home team may have won the World Series.
And you think sex isn't related to the past? Oh yeah, abso-flippin-lutely.
Totally.
And so third one is, if you are in a relationship or you're looking for a relationship and you've never asked the question, do I have space for a relationship, and truly and genuinely answered that question, you're gonna run into trouble. And one way that as a single you're gonna know that is that you think that having a dating service that would connect you to all kinds of great dates would be a great way to do dating in this world. This is something you're gonna wanna look at. You're gonna wanna get to the bottom of what's that about.
And for those of you who are coupled already, here's the other thing, and I just want to say up front, I have 2 children and grandkids. I love kids. However, what a lot of couples do, and don't even necessarily notice they're doing it, is the kids become both the primary focus and even in a way become the source energy that you rely on pretty unconsciously to fuel, to be the energy that drives the relationship. And that really causes all kinds of problems.
Another way it shows up, again, dating or relating, is you aren't clear, or you find yourself asking the question, what priority is relationship in my life? Or what priority is a partner in my life? And there's confusion in you. So again, if that confusion is showing up, if there's that wonder, or worse yet, there's actually arguing going on about it. And, you know, I can tell you how many times women or men early on in dating, few dates, they're talking about priority. This is a key thing. So it's something you want to work through and get clear on.
And that doesn't change, by the way, because you're married or in a long-term relationship. This is an issue that can come up 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line. So, and then
actually, for sure. Yeah. I mean, no question, over and over again in long-term relationship. Until
you learn how to do this in a better way, of course. Then the other thing we want to say is that schedules, I literally have couples who will sit in my office and say, you know, I'm really unhappy that we don't have more time together. And I'll say, well, so why don't you make that happen? Well, we can't really, I think we have an opening in about 5 weeks that we could have a night to ourselves. So that is a sure sign that you did not check out the square footage of your figurative, emotional, and heart space and life space for a relationship.
And you can get over this. You can shift this. Believe me, even if you're already in a relationship, none of these are permanent mistakes. They're not permanent reasons that things will fail. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've been through 3 secrets already. And these 3 secrets are all about early on in the relationship. And as a matter of fact, as we get into the 4th secret, it's about very early on in the relationship, before you've decided even to be a couple, or certainly as you're transitioning into being a couple from that dating space. And so stay with us, because these mistakes will happen, but recognize that even if you're in a long-term relationship, you've been together for decades, and these things didn't happen at the beginning, all it takes is to learn how to go back and build the foundation, how to go back and lay the groundwork, how to have the conversations, what conversations to have.
And so that is very cleverly a nice segue into number 4. And that is, given that I'm a relationship architect, I really find a lot of value in the metaphor of relationship being very similar to a home, a house. You have a dream house, you have a dream relationship, and none of us would ever think about building a house without a design or plans. So this mistake is, you go into relationship, or if you're dating, you're already thinking about the relationship. Yeah, I like him or her. Yeah, I think this might be the one. And off we go. And so you get things rolling without any design, no foundation, and really a lot of times you're winging what you're going to build on whatever foundation you have.
So one of the first things that I'll have individuals look at in a relationship or couples is, have you talked about, one of the signs that you're probably making this mistake is, have you talked about your relationship to telling the truth with each other? And that sounds so basic, but I can't tell you how many couples have no idea what their partner actually thinks when it comes to telling the truth. And that could be about big stuff, and it could be about, how do I look in this dress, honey? And what do we actually want to do with those questions? But it's an important conversation.
And very similar to that will be money. Many couples that I've met that have been together for quite a while, and they never, at the beginning or to this day, they really let their discomfort around money, whatever their money stuff is, and we all have some kind of money stuff usually, they don't talk about it. And then arguments flare up and trust begins to get eroded because money's not being handled in the way that one partner or the other thinks it should.
And it's crazy that this can show up early on in dating too, because all of a sudden we're stirred up and irritated about something financial, and we've never even talked about money, let alone early in a relationship do we even have any business talking about it. So it shows up there too.
So then the next one that we want to bring up is that, again, irritations are happening, annoying, really mundane stuff comes up. And you're just starting to notice that you're getting more consistently annoyed or irritated with your partner. And then maybe you come see somebody like Joanne and I, and you say, oh, my partner's driving me crazy. Well, what's driving you crazy? Well, they're not being the way I think they should be. Well, how do you think they should be? I don't know.
Well, and that leads me to the last one, is values and needs. Like, we don't articulate and don't have conversations. So if you can't articulate what your values are, both as an individual and your values in relationship, if you can't articulate your needs quickly, you're making this mistake. And it's a setup unless you learn how to do this and connect, because we will actually have differences. And so as we articulate it, we're not going to be 100% in sync. And so part of the art form and the design is, what do we do when they're different so that we can still succeed at the love?
And by the way, when differences come up, you remember I may have said earlier that we don't get any education. And one of the things that I never got an education on, and I bet most of you didn't either, is how do you deal with those differences in values and priorities and beliefs that you have. And that's just something we haven't been taught that is actually learnable.
Totally. All right, we're going on to number 5. And God, we could talk, I mean, we could teach an entire week probably on these 10 mistakes. So to keep us jumping, this is one of my favorites. We think the opposite sex should behave like us. And this one, whenever I'm talking about this topic, I remember just the most beautiful example of a client, or actually it wasn't a client, it was a prospective client who called me and said, can we talk about potentially working together? And he said, or we were talking, and I said, well, tell me about what you want to create. And he said, well, I want this kind of a relationship, and I want us to be intimate and connected. And oh, by the way, I want a woman who's really sexually expressed and free in her sexuality. And I'm like, okay, great. One of the questions I think when I hear that is, okay, are you going to be a man that shows up to attract that kind of woman? But where it really got interesting was a couple minutes later, he continued on and he said, oh, by the way, I don't want a woman that's emotional.
I love that story.
Oh, it's one of my favorites because it's the epitome of this mistake. We think that we should be, you know, how he deals with his emotions, how men deal with emotions is how women should deal with emotions. And here's one of the interesting pieces around this, is that the truth is the same things that drive us crazy can actually totally turn us on. And that's the case with emotion and sexuality. So guys, you got to learn how to be with a woman's emotions. So that's one of the ways that we see differences show up, or that mistakes show up. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a few ways that you could know that this is relevant to you. Male or female, dating or couple. You have those mornings where you wake up and you kind of wonder, you see your partner doing something, or the person you're dating, and you maybe even let it spill out loud. Why would you even do that?
What were you thinking?
Don't you get that this is the way that you should be doing it?
I would never do that. Oh, those are, you hear those or even think those? Here's another one. Your partner checks out during sex. And again, we think sex is all about sex. It's not. It's tied to so many other aspects of relationship. And very commonly, the reason a partner will check out is because we're approaching it the way we'd approach it. And we've got to learn how the opposite sex, how our partner, if we're in same-sex relationships, is expressing themselves. So to think that we're different or think that we're the same as men and women,
Not going to work. And here's another good one. You really want your partner to do something or to behave in a certain way. And you're getting progressively frustrated that they're not. And then again, you come see somebody like us and you tell us about this. And the first thing we're going to ask you is, well, have you told them what you're needing? No. Why should I have to do that?
And if I have to tell them, then I don't want it. Because it somehow doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Total setup.
Yeah.
Total setup. Okay, here's the last way to recognize this one, and this one's particularly for women. You think you want a sensitive new age guy. You think you want the guy that's soft and emotional. And then you're so frustrated and disappointed that he's not showing up the way you want him to. Women, if that's you, get curious about how to shift that.
And if you happen to be one of those men that are a sensitive new age guy, speaking as a recovering sensitive new age guy, is that you're going to have an opportunity to be able to learn how you can have that vulnerability and your connection to heart that was really a big part of that sensitive New Age guy archetype, I guess I'll call it. But you also, your woman wants to be able to have the peak of your masculine strength and intensity and potency.
Oh,
So
that's
being
what
able,
melts us.
yeah, and being able to balance that and get that they're not mutually exclusive, that's something that you can also learn a lot more about.
Absolutely. That dynamic, that distinction between us is so key.
Shall we move to number 6?
Yes.
Okay, number 6.
We put, you put a lot of energy towards trying to avoid conflict or make sure that you never upset your partner or you never upset your date.
Oh boy.
Yes. This one can be actually disastrous. And all the ways that one of the ways that this shows up is that we tuck things under the rug. And I don't need to say that. Oh, I don't want to say that. And we avoid those moments where we're challenged because we don't want to stir the pot. And what we do is eventually that pot gets really full, or as I like to say, there's a carpet that's getting really, really full with all that stuff underneath it. And one's over here and one's over here, and we can't feel each other. No, I don't want to have sex, but it's because of all the unspoken stuff.
And another way that you're going to know that that's going on and that this mistake is a big player in your relationship is you start getting a very short fuse. The sarcasm factor. Well, how was your day, honey? Well, what the hell do you care? Things like that, which is all too real, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and if you are one of those people, and I know first thing, if I'm talking to a client and they go, I hate conflict, I know we have a lot of work to do. So if you're somebody that you recognize, I hate conflict, it's really, really important for you to work with this one.
And another surefire way to fall into this and get stuck in it is when you realize, or maybe you don't realize, that you're doing everything you can to try and make your partner or your date happy. It's not just about avoiding conflict. It's I'm going to really try and give you what I think you want, even though every bone in my body is going, ugh, oh my God. And you do it anyway.
And it is that sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. Like, we're not checking in. Is this really okay with me? And we do it unconsciously. And then it's worse, as Jeff said, when we consciously know this isn't okay with me and we do it anyway. So that's number 6.
So number 7 is you get into relationship thinking and believing that to be conscious and to be metaphysically correct, then you have to be the same.
You have to be equal. It reminds me of, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. This one reminds me of an article that came out in New York Times Online a year ago or so. And the title of the article was something along the lines of, do equal marriages have less sex? And the answer is yes. So this idea of equal, same. The first way to know that you're probably making this mistake is if you try to avoid typical gender roles, the traditional roles. If you're trying consciously to avoid those, there's some unresolved inner mindset stuff that's playing out and impacting your sex, impacting your chemistry, impacting your kisses. This mistake, that when you figure out how to get around it and through it is actually the correct way to say it. This is what brings back the spark, the chemistry in kisses, conversation, and lovemaking.
Another thing that will show up in this regard is that if you're a woman, you think you have to have all your shit together to be loved. You've got to be a certain way, or I can't look too girly, or I can't look too weak. All those kinds of things.
Or I got to have my life all sorted out, and this I's got to be dotted, and this T's got to be crossed. No, believe me, women, it's not what you think.
And men, pardon my French, but you know that you're in this trap if you find yourself frequently wanting to say something and the thought runs through your head, am I going to come off like a complete asshole if I tell my truth?
And ladies, the other side of how that shows up for us is, and I was the queen of this one, the modern day woman's mantra of when someone asks us if we need help or if they could help us with something, we go, no, I got it. If you say that, ladies, your relationship's in trouble.
And actually, let me give you a little 411 from the male side of this particular issue. It also comes into play when, if you're a man and you're in a straight relationship, your woman wants to treat you like a king. She wants to give to you. And you go, no, I'm all right. I'm good. We both do it.
Oh, we both do it. We have our own versions. You're so absolutely right. So right.
I've never done that, but I hear it happens.
All right. And let's see, did we get everything on that one? I think we
forgot
did.
the friend in the roommate zone.
The friend in the roommate zone. So yes, and I kind of alluded, do the equal marriages have less sex? Yes. So one of the ways to know that you might be making this mistake is because you feel like you're in the friend or roommate zone. And if you're dating and you keep feeling like you get friend zoned, pay attention to this.
Or if you're in a long-term relationship, it can only take a few years actually before, with all the different things that are going on that we're talking about, the way that life comes into our relationships, you can slide so easily into being married roommates, friends with benefits energetically, or then even worse, the longer it goes on, you just become roommates with no benefits. And speaking of benefits,
yes,
that takes us right to number 8.
Number 8. And number 8 is you don't enjoy, fully express, and fully engage in your sexuality. And that, we think, well, actually, let's put this first way to recognize that. This is one of the ways, and that often hear it with women, but men can say this too, is that, you know what, if I never have sex again, it's okay. It just doesn't matter. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't do that much for me. And I've never found somebody that if you really get deep down that that's actually true.
Yeah, and that's whether you're young or you're older. Maybe that thought would make sense if you were like 97.
Yeah, but not before.
But not when you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60.
70. I know lots of, oh my God, I can tell you a story. I won't because it's not part of this, but a couple that I got the privilege to support, she was 65, he was 82, I believe, and they both got together at that age and they had the best sex of their entire lives because they finally got over the crap.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely there. It's never too late.
And then another way you can know that this is an issue for you is really noticing the level of embarrassment, the level of shame, inhibition, guilt. You really would love your partner to do X to you, and you're mortified at the thought of asking because, after all, what's she going to think of me, or what's he going to think of me that I want to do this or try this out? So that is definitely going to lead you down a rough road.
Yeah, well, and one of the ways that shows up with women is, and so many of us aren't willing to own this, and I wasn't for a long time, but I knew it, I wanted it, was we want a man who will ravish us, who will put us against a wall and kiss us, or put us down on the bed, and yet we want it so much, and it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen. And if that's you, pay attention. This is a mistake that you're making. You're showing up in a way where he doesn't feel like he can show up.
And gentlemen,
Yep.
a little reality check here. If any of you men watching this have found yourself thinking some version of, well, you know, this position every time has worked for decades. I wonder why she seems a little disinterested when I'm doing the same damn thing that I always do. And in her head, she's checking off, okay, right nipple, oh, left breast. And we can be clueless because it's been working for us. I'm sure it's working for her.
The other one is so true. Oh my God. Can I just go to sleep? But we love what we do. But then the other one, guys, this one goes with the ravishing piece. And if you have this innate pullback, so to speak, like if you've got these natural sexual instincts and tendencies to want to ravish, and you pull back from those because you don't want to be that guy, you're zapping sexual chemistry.
Yeah, you're cutting it off. And it's really a combination of that natural masculine desire to ravish and take. And it's about claiming. And it isn't just about in the bedroom.
Mm-mm.
So
not at all.
More to learn about that.
Yeah. Definitely not just about sex, but it's certainly there. Okay. So we're through 8 of the secrets right now. I'm sorry, not secrets. I often talk about secrets, but we're actually through 8 of the mistakes that we're going to talk about right now. And so just check in with yourself. Are you feeling a little uncomfortable or maybe even really shocked at how many times you've made these mistakes, or that, oh God, this is what I'm doing right now? And so to really recognize that, I said this earlier, but that we can get over these mistakes.
So we're just going to kind of quickly move through 9 and 10, because these are kind of the top 2, if you were, even though they're at the bottom of the 1 to 10. So number 9 is you can love someone else. You believe that you can love someone else without realizing that you don't love yourself enough yet.
And the way that shows up is that very often it's the nice girl, nice guy syndrome. And we've talked a little bit about this, but it's where I want to make sure that they think I'm the good guy, or I don't want to upset. And so we show up in a way that we're all out there looking at what's going to work for the other person, and we're missing in that equation because we haven't honored ourselves. So if you're looking out there more often than you're looking here, this is a mistake.
And that leads to what really, within this umbrella of this number 9, is one of the biggest mistakes and fatal mistakes to a relationship, which is you abandon yourself. That often will show up with, well, I'm going to make my partner or my date's needs more important than mine, because if I take care of them, they're going to naturally want to take care of me.
Or they won't leave me.
Right, they won't leave me.
Which is another indicator. If we are trying to make sure they don't leave, that's a sure sign that there's some self-love work to do.
And this is really, everybody, this is the one that a lot of people miss. A lot of people miss it.
I spent 20 years, was it 20 years? I was I was 21, I think, when I had this experience. So it was probably, it was happening before this, but I was in college, I was dating, or I wanted to date this guy. I was really into him. And I'll never forget, I can still see where we were sitting. And he said, I am not dating you because you don't love yourself. And you can't love somebody else until you love yourself. And I was pissed and I was mad and I was sure he was wrong. And then, oh yeah, I mentioned that divorce and relationship after relationship. So I'm in my mid-30s when I'm like, shit, he was right. And I couldn't see it.
So that also segues nicely into the final mistake, which is believing that a relationship inherently takes care of itself. If relationship is supposed to be fun, well then why would you need to work on it? They're supposed to be fun. And if we could leave you with just one thing that you would never forget, whether you ever tuned into us or applied to the program or not, this is the thing that can change your life, is even though you intellectually can say, well, of course relationships take work, emotionally and all the little patterns, and Joanna mentioned blueprints that we grew up with around relationship and foundational mindsets that are not really great programming most of the time, those parts of us can actually believe, well, if we love each other, okay, buzzkill time, everybody. If we love each other, love should be enough. If you don't have love, you're host. That's true. However, love is not enough. It is not enough to get through any of these things we've talked about. It's the minimum requirement.
Absolutely.
I invite you to look at it that way. So, you know, how you might know that this is applicable to you is when your partner starts changing. All of a sudden, they're showing up differently. They're wanting to eat pasta instead of all vegetarian stuff. Or, you know, they're trying different things, and you're kind of watching them going, wow. And you start getting really uncomfortable.
And so another one for those that are dating, and if we're out there and if we can just find the right guy or that girl that's all of these things, that when I find the one and she's going to know how to communicate and she's going to want great sex, and you know, we have this picture that when we find this one, then it's all just going to work out and everything's going to be hunky-dory. This is sure doom for any future relationship if you go into it thinking that you just find the right partner and it's all going to work out.
And here's the last dead giveaway that this 10th mistake is really probably running the show, and this is one of the biggest destroyers of relationship, if not the number one, and that is you're not even talking about how the relationship is doing. You're not checking in with each other. You hear me say check in, and you're going, what?
What's a relationship check-in?
And why would we need one? And it gets so easy. I've been there. Everybody I know has been there at one point or another, where that thinking of, well, we love each other, or you're having this thought. And men, I find men are guilty of this more than women. We actually can think to ourselves or say to our buddies, how's things with your marriage? Oh, they're great. We're not having any problems. We don't fight. We don't have any conflict. So you think your relationship's fine because your woman isn't bitching at you or fighting with you about something, when in fact, if that's what's happening, your relationship is probably in trouble.
Yeah, we have to, you know, the thing is we get uncomfortable. We don't want to have that conversation because we're afraid something might come up. Oh my God, if something comes up, what am I going to do? And we run away. So if that's a fear, that's the key. And here's where it really gets sad, you know, the relationship after relationship after relationship thing, is that we actually don't have a relationship check-in until we're having the breakup conversation. And one of us is sitting there going, what happened? I thought it was all good. Wait, can I have another chance? And we're so far down the road and we never talked about it.
Yeah. Too many men I've encountered that just get devastated that their wives leave them, usually after the last kid's out of the house, and they literally have no idea what happened. What? Why? And it was so predictable if you were paying attention. So those are the 10 that we see as the biggest mistakes that can really blow up a relationship in a